Hi everyone, welcome to PPUK podcast. Tonight with me we've got Lee.
Hello, I'm back.
We've got Paddy.
Good evening.
I'm Chopin, and together with we've got a guest tonight. Well, I should say, is long-term Prince fan that I've seen at many a Prince event and many a Prince party, and author of the new book Prince, King of Bsides, Matt Osgood. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you guys.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So, writing a new book about Prince. What's your history with Prince? I mean, we've all got our own origin stories, albums and songs.
It goes back a long time now. 1985, stuck at boarding school. Top of the Pops played 1999. So I'd missed all of Purple Rain. Hadn't really registered with me. I was into bands like Rainbow and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that.
Cool.
Saw the video, was like, wow, that is awesome. Who's that? Found out a guy that had a cassette of 1999, the album, traded it, treasured it, played it to death on my W.H. Smith version of a Walkman, and never looked back. Sent my mum to get me singles where she probably didn't really know what she was doing because I was stuck at boarding school, and didn't realise, but I started collecting vinyl then, basically.
Oh wow! So did you start off going back and collecting all the albums? Did you go back and collect all the albums? Because at that point you've got like what, 5 or 6 albums still to collect, right?
Yeah, I did that. Got the albums. Then I was getting the Time albums and the Vanity 6 album, Sheila E. And then I kind of got caught up. Probably by the time Around the World in a Day kind of came out, and then I was kind of always current.
And when did you first make it to see him? Did you end up going to the parade ones? Or?
No, I unfortunately was stuck in boarding school, and the first I heard about that, because obviously there was no mobile phones or internet, was through Smash Hits, that it had actually happened. First time I saw him live, I did have tickets for Sign of the Times, but that obviously got cancelled. So it was Love Sexy at Wembley Arena, which just blew my mind.
That's a pretty impressive first show for anyone.
I'm jealous because that was the year after I just missed Love Sexy.
Well, I got even luckier then because I was then at uni in Hatfield. So I could go for the nude tour to see into London really easily. So I went at the time what I thought was quite a lot, 5 times. I now know better. But at the time I thought I was going a lot. So yeah, no, and then that year I don't know if you saw them too. Was Wendy and Lisa? They played London, and they were so good live. I don't understand why they've not played more gigs. They were honestly a top 5 gig.
So that's one thing I didn't know. They did their own tour coming to the UK around that time.
Yeah, for it must have been for Fruit at the Bottom album, and I think that if I remember right, they had a little bit of a hit with Satisfaction.
Yeah,
Always Be My Baby was out, and
yeah.
It didn't really take flight, but that gig was really, really good.
What was the venue? Do you remember the venue?
It's shut down now. It's I can't remember.
Someone
I can't remember. It's a long
It'll be in the
time
comments.
ago.
We know what it was.
Like the Forum or something like that.
It was in London. I might have had a drink.
You remember the performance, but that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So what do you think, all these years after you first experienced those first couple of albums and discovered those first couple of gigs, what is it about Prince that, I mean, we've all got our own thing, but like, what is it about him that keeps you coming back so much that you're writing about him?
I think, in my humble opinion, it's a number of things. One, there's just was never been anyone like him. You know, I think, and I don't just mean that from a talent and music perspective. I think from a personality perspective, a time that he was born and came into the industry when he did, his fight for autonomy and freedom right from the start kind of set a precedent throughout his career that's probably not been matched by anyone ever. You know, to be a producer of your first record and create your own and be the master of your own sound throughout your career. Who as an artist, band, or single act has done that? No one.
And starting as a teenager as well. I mean, that's quite an amazing feat.
Exactly. And then I think it's probably an element of his circumstances in terms of a broken family and the competitiveness that can bring to things. The fact that Minnesota has brutal winters, so you're practice. You become really good, and that I think that's proven not just by him, but the likes of Jesse Johnson and Jamin Lewis coming out of the same environment at the same time. Morris Day. I think then it's obviously it's what his sense of humor and the uniqueness of his character that comes through in his songs. The fact that he wanted to be bold in a time when, well, probably someone might say that this is the wrong thing, but early onset culture wars were happening in America with Reagan and the moral majority.
Absolutely.
And he was pushing back against that. And then once he made kind of megastardom, he didn't use that to consolidate things. He used that to be even more creative and go into even more interesting areas and territories. So he never did the normal thing. And then once you bring into that, getting to see him live, and he ruins you for any other act.
That's
when
very
you
true.
see him live.
Yeah, well.
And you see a whole other aspect. You see a bit more of his sense of humor that perhaps doesn't necessarily always come through. And then, fast forward through the decades, how he was still curious. He was still curious at 40. He was still curious at 50 and wanting to do new things and not just do things by the norm. So that's probably a long answer, but all of those aspects of what made him Prince, and no one else has ever been like him.
I think for all of us, that would be a very short answer because we could we could go on for days, and we frequently do. So yeah, you've been a fan all this time. You've been, and I've seen you out at so many events over the years. How do you go from, say, being passively active, passively taking in Prince's art, and then turning that into something like, right, your book?
Redundancy. I got made redundant in the summer of 23 from a job I really liked, and I knew when I'd taken it wasn't going to be a forever job, but I didn't. It kind of ended a little bit earlier than I thought, and job hunting at 50 plus is horrific, and it's soul destroying. So I wanted to be distracted by something, so I would do all the LinkedIn and applications in the mornings, go for a walk, do something else, but then in the afternoons I'd start writing. And I had an idea that I wanted to write about Prince, and because other than lottery, it's the only other thing I actually know enough about to write. And I went down a cul-de-sac, and most of you know Rob.
Yeah, Rob. Yeah, Mr. Rob S.
Of the Purple Stream, and I was doing bits and pieces with him on that and sharing with him, and he didn't like anything I was writing at all. Didn't get it. Didn't think it was interesting, and I kept writing, and I realised I'd gone down a cul-de-sac eventually, and I went out with some uni mates, and we were, just catching up. And I was chatting to a couple of them, and I was describing that kind of stuff, and they said, well, what else could you write about? And I had a few other ideas, and one of them was to focus on Prince's B-sides. And she jumped on that, really excited, and go, well, that'd be really interesting. That would be, and this is someone who's likes gigs. She constantly goes to Adam Ann. I've been to The Cure with her. I've been to see Prince with her. But she's a casual Prince fan, I would probably say, certainly versus the present company.
Yeah.
But she jumped on that, and I thought, oh, maybe there is something really interesting in that. And I didn't get a job, but what I started getting was contracts. And so I would be doing contract work. And then when there was a lull, I started writing. And that's how I got into it and did it. And last summer, I had a 2-month gap between two major contracts. And that's basically when I kind of did the bulk of it.
So is that what planted the seed, Matt, of like a casual Prince fan saying, you know, this would be pretty cool?
It was her response to that as an idea, because I had a couple of other ideas, and it was just the reaction from her, someone that's into music, and again, from when I was involved with the Purple Stream, what I had clocked and why I'd had that idea is so many people that are younger don't actually know what a B-side is.
That was one of the bits I really liked in the book, because you basically said that the B-sides have faded away because of technology, and it's so true. It's like it doesn't.
Yeah,
B-sides don't really exist.
no, and it was that kind of someone like being really interested. That's a nugget, and then seeing people talking about, what were your favorite B-sides, and they come up with just normal songs. It's like, that's not a B-side. That wasn't a B-side. So that then kind of crystallized it in my mind, and then I started writing. And writing, I try and write. I don't write every day when I can, but when I
Yeah.
can, I try to write something every day so that you're progressing. And it might mean that you rewrite what you've wrote the day before, because you wait, you had a coffee, and now what you wrote yesterday was a bit rubbish. But it kept me going, and the research side of it. That was the thing I wanted to make sure I was. When I read a Prince book, I get really annoyed when it's wrong, or a Prince article in a magazine.
To be fair, Matt, you have commented on PPUK sometimes when I've got something wrong, and you popped up, and I was like, I knew Matt would know this, and I always correct it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. And I do it. I was going to say it in the Kenny Everett best possible taste, but no, with the best intentions.
Yeah. It always makes me laugh, Matt. It really does.
Yeah, and I do it to Rob too. So you're not the only one. I'm indiscriminate who I correct, but it's something I really wanted to be good with. So I researched it as thoroughly as I possibly could. So that was, and doing that was enjoyable. Reading things, going on YouTube, or whatever. It became, it wasn't a chore at all. It was a very enjoyable thing to do until I got to the formatting and the type checking and stuff. That was less fun.
Did you do it in chronological order, or did you do it like your favourite albums, or did you do it in chronological order?
Some were much easier to write and enjoyable to write than others, that's for sure. No, I didn't do it in any particular order. I wrote the prologue first, the long prologue first. That was the first bit. Rob didn't like that either. But by then I was too into it and liking what I was doing. No, I would choose songs either because I was inspired by something or I'd seen something in my research, or I knew I would be able to finish it within that week or time period that I'd set myself, more than anything else. So if I knew I was going to be having to do some work or I was away on holiday or something, I would choose a smaller song to write about, so I knew I could, because I like to have set myself little goals and achieve them to keep me going.
Absolutely. And that's how you get stuff finished as well, because it's from a creative point of view, things are easy to start because you've got the creative urge, but to finish requires you to work past that kind of burn out the energy of that creative urge.
Exactly and that. Then exactly that.
Yeah. And also in that research phase, you get to rediscover all of those songs and listen to them. And
exactly. And that was, some of those B-sides, especially the extended versions, because I haven't got a record player here anymore. I've got the vinyl, but I don't have a record player. So I haven't heard them until I was playing them on YouTube again.
When you went and studied them, sort of you can study them in isolation, but obviously as a sort of hardcore Prince fan, you're never quite studying them in isolation. But was there anything in general that really changed with your attitude towards the B-sides, or your thoughts about them as a sort of slightly separate body of work within work, that changed significantly because you were looking at them through that lens of writing the book and focusing on them?
No, the only lens I tried to apply was relating it back to my experience at the time of them, or what was going on at the time, to give people a perspective, certainly of the early stuff and through Purple Rain, through to Sign of the Times, of just how big and just how important Prince was in the 80s. Because I think that's lost today on most people. So I tried to paint that picture and put them in that perspective. And certainly it helped with songs like Hello, where he was responding to something, or She's Always in My Hair, which, you know, I wrote a big section about in terms of kind of an alternative universe of what if.
You were so right. It should have been the lead single for that album. There is no doubt. Never mind the B-side. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So songs like that from those time periods allowed me to paint a larger canvas. It got harder in terms of the later songs, especially the ones that kind of came out around musicology, because they were lesser songs, to be honest, in my humble opinion. They were more kind of throwaway songs rather than more of an important piece within his jigsaw of or his canyon of work. And I think the other aspect was, you know, another example would be Shockadelica with what he did, how it came about. I was lucky enough too to get communication with Susan Rogers, like you guys interviewed.
We love her.
She's absolutely brilliant. And, you know, tell that story about Camille and, you know, messing around with Jesse Johnson's head and whatever. So bringing aspects of that in allowed me to kind of expand beyond just the B-sides a little bit.
Also, one of the things that I was very interested in, it was like, because discuss the 80s and the 2000s ones, but there was something about the early 90s ones where it blurred the line between remix and B-side. So like when you're something like Q in Doubt, which I would have considered a B-side, do you consider it and Do Your Dance, do you consider those B-sides or do you consider those remixes?
For the purposes of being able to write something about them, I considered them remixes because it got tricky around that time. You know, great releases in terms of Prince exploring this larger format. Suddenly he wasn't constrained with a single, with even if it was a maxi single 12-inch. He suddenly could do these maxi CD singles and really go to town on New Power Generation or the Scandalous Sex Suite or whatever.
Yeah.
And those releases are really, and I did do a section on that, why I didn't consider them, because they're extensions. Right, Scandalous Sex Suite, absolutely awesome, but it's an extension of one song. You know, I Wish You Heaven, the three parts of that, again, it's all a continuation of one song rather than a B-side. When you get to Love Left, Love Right, it's an extension of a song, but it's a song in its own right. So it came down to subjective calls by me, literally based on, is there enough to write about?
That's a good enough reason, to be quite honest. Because it is a bloodline. Even in my own head, it's like if you'd have to go through them and choose which ones are remixes and which ones are considered B-side, I think a lot of us would fall on different sides of the fence with some of those. I mean, Violet the Organ Grinder is a song, you know, Gangsta Glam is a song. It's got verses, it's got choruses, but something like Get Some Solo or Do Your Dance, the chorus is actually a little bit of cream. So yeah, I can understand, and it's more like chanting, so I can understand the.
Yeah, and look, another example would be go right back to the beginning. I didn't include it. Got to stop messing about. Now, the reason I didn't include it was an A-side as far as I was concerned. You know, what I didn't realise was for all the Americans, that was their first non-album track B-side. And
Yeah.
so to every single one of them, it's like, what are you doing? You missed this. And it's like, no, I haven't. It was a single. And it was a release versus a single. But the grief from that.
Well, I had a lot of respect for you putting it as a single, because then you're thinking internationally of what was released as a single. You know, like, you know, in South Africa they had The Cross as a promo single, so actually The Cross was a single somewhere, but it's, you know,
Factually, it's more down to your own.
Actually, it was a single. It's just not in the major record buying.
Yeah.
You know, Prince's major record buying mind, right? But he had a career. He had an international career, and you got to think of the whole. So given that 1999 is like 1985, so I'm guessing that's the reissue of it that came out just after the kind of the hits of Purple Rain. So was How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore the first B-side that you actually heard?
No, I probably had heard. Well, sorry, I can't answer that completely accurately because my mind was probably blotted out by Erotic City. So if I did, I probably wasn't of an age to appreciate How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore, but I could appreciate Erotic City.
For me, Erotic City is like, and I love you hearing you say that, because, you know, for me, Erotic City is the Into the Groove, like Prince's Into the Groove. Only Prince never released that as a single anywhere, but it was one of those things where the B-side took over what was the A-side. Like, Angel was the A-side, Into the Groove was the B-side, and in America, Into the Groove is not a single, and in Europe, it's a massive single. But I think if any of Prince's B-sides could be, especially in the club, I think Erotic City is something that I've heard endure longer than most of his dance hits.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The only other one I think that comes close to that probably is Nasty Girl. That will still get played.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I tried to paint that picture in, you know, building up to how impactful Erotic City was at the time. So, yeah, look, 15-year-old me didn't really appreciate God or How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore. I do now, but I didn't then.
Yeah. Well, 15-year-old me was hooked on Violet the Organ Grinder.
That explains everything.
There you go. Exactly. Weirdly enough, everybody's like, I want Anastasia at my funeral. That B-side. And I don't know about you. I mean, I think, and not just Prince, I think across the music spectrum of music buyers of that age, there is something about the B-side, because the single is delivered to you. The B-side feels more found by its audience. And so if you appreciate it or love it, then it feels much more of a personal connection to the artist in some way.
You're likely to have heard the A-side beforehand. And, you know, that's what it's the A-side for. It's pumped out to radio. It's supposed to be the commercial hit, blah, blah, blah. The B-side is like unwrapping a Christmas present. You never know what you're going to get. You know, some acts are really bad and they'll just do an instrumental or they'll do an album track, and it's just lazy. Whereas for the, you know, and Prince did do that sometimes in the early days, but you know, more often than not, he gave added value, and boy, did he do that with his B-sides. And you didn't have the commercial pressure. They could be a more up-to-date song that, you know, wasn't part of an album project necessarily. So they were always, you know, there was just potential for something that was just completely out there. Shockadelic or La 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 He He He, Scarlet Pussy. You know, you wouldn't put those probably on an album, but the B-sides, perfect.
I remember. I agree with you, because I remember when I was first getting into Prince, there was a couple of people that were giving me like mixtapes and everything, and it was never like the Sign of the Times is When Doves Cries or The Kiss that they were telling me, no, you've got to hear this. It was always Scarlet. It was the Scarlet Pussies. It was the Erotic Cities, and And I remember when I got into Prince, I didn't realize my brother had he was a bit of like a sci-fi nerd, so he had all the kind of, and a comic nerd, so he had all of the Batman ones because he liked the single art. So I had all of the B-sides in my house ready to go that he'd never played. So I had that 200 Balloons, Fill You Up, and there was something about discovering those songs that was just so it was so personal because it was a rummage thing. I had to make an effort.
Yeah,
I had to reach out to find those.
I think
songs.
a lot of it is down to how you consume them. I mean, when I got into Prince, I had a friend at school who was a big Prince fan, and he copied some onto cassette. And then I got into the trading because he didn't have any singles. And my first exposure to the B-sides was somebody who was a trader who did me a tape with a load of B-sides on. So receiving them that way was fascinating because it was like, it in retrospect, it was like, holy shit, you could have had such a good album and a half, 2 albums out of just the 80s B-sides that would have knocked most things west. Granted, they would have been slightly more experimental in certain senses. But I think a lot of it's down to how you absorb them initially. And I do very much think of our fellow PPUK colleague Andy in this sense with regard to his comments about sweeties when he said, everything's a sort of a special sweetie. I think the B-sides in particular, as Matt's kind of alluded to, it's like what you get when you unwrap the box. So yeah, very, very special.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Somebody is who writes as much material as Prince as well. And is so sort of, particularly in the 80s, consistently innovative, with some very, very interesting musicians around him at the time who were stretching him and informing him from a musical perspective. It just made that whole. It was almost a perfect storm for me for the B-sides in the 80s. Very special stuff.
And he was very rare because most of his B-sides could be an A-side compared to other artists.
I think so.
Yeah.
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 I hopefully that comes through with, I in the way I talk about them. So again, certainly the 80s songs, 100% that.
Oh, I hear you. In particular, I hear you.
There's a couple of 90s ones.
No, there are.
Hashtag horny pony.
Well, that was
Violet the Organ Grinder is a cracker. It is
Violet the Organ Grinder.
No doubt about it.
Well, actually, and Love Left, Love Right. Yeah. I mean, when I first heard that song, I heard that song before I heard the 12-inch of Let's Go Crazy. So I had my timelines mixed up. So when I would listen to that, the whole extended stretch of Let's Go Crazy, when it goes to that da 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 da, and I was like, where have I heard that before? He's done that before. It's like, oh, he done it on there's a synth that does it on Love Left, Love Right, and it was just like, oh no, it's the other way round. It's like he's referencing that song the other way round, but it was. I remember that was for me, Love Left, Love Right was the fresh one.
Yeah, but I get that. Everyone starts somewhere. There's probably fewer and fewer people that can say that they started with For You, sadly, just because of passage of time. But, if someone came in at 31-21, great, awesome. Good album.
Oh, yeah.
If that's your introduction to Prince, you've got wonders to explore. Wonders.
I think one of us has said before, we envy, because obviously we've experienced it all, that we envy people that and there's a lot of YouTube videos now where a lot of young people are listening to songs or B-sides for the very first time, and obviously we don't get that experience unless it's like a new release or something like that. And that's always fun to watch as well.
Segues me beautifully. One of the things that you said in the book, Matt, was what teenager in their right mind would want to listen to their parents' music, in a sense, which there is a lot of truth to. But I think we talked about it in one of the past. I think it was with the last Scotty interview. It is interesting though, and again, I'm going into the dangerous territory of there's no good music anymore, which I think there is some good music out there. But I think, without going into depth, I think due to how the music industry works, we never hear the geniuses in their garage anymore because they don't suit being handled and so on and so forth. But I use my daughter as an example. She's genuinely into Prince outside of my sort of influence. You mentioned The Cure earlier as well. She's really got into The Cure and all that stuff. I do think that it's more likely that a teenager now would possibly pick up some older music and really invest in it, perhaps more than I did when I was coming up, listening to I did listen to bits from the 50s and the 60s, but I had the 80s and the 90s to have fun with. Whereas I think kids now, possibly, if they go back and look at the 80s and 90s, and again, I see this through my daughter very strongly, the quality's still there and it seeps through because of the types of music, how music's marketed, what's out there, what's popular. And I'm not saying, it's just not all as good. It's a little bit more subtle. There's an aspect to that, I think, in a sense, because I don't think there's the artistic freedom is there anymore, and the sort of eclectic nature of the charts, and the charts aren't there in the same way. So yeah, that really chimed with me when I saw the statement, and I guess from the perspective of, I'm possibly on the borderline of disagreeing a little bit, but the sentiment as you meant it, completely get. I know what you mean.
I think, the example of Kate Bush and running up that hill in Stranger Things.
Yeah, great
If
example.
It's a good song. It was a good song when it was released. It's always been a good song ever since it was released. It's not been heard by certain generations because it's not in what they consume or how they consume music, into something that they do consume, and suddenly they're appreciating it. Now, there's no reason why a whole multitude of Prince songs can't experience that kind of, discovery for new generations. I think when it comes to what the parent thing and parents recommending music or whatever, it's more them finding it and discovering it on their own and then liking it in their own right, rather than me trying to tell them listen to this, it's great. It's like, well,
yeah,
that's an automatic, like, no, it's not. So
yeah,
what I don't know now, which is again different, is whether albums are listened to in the same way as they were. It's much more about singles, I would say. Taylor Swift fans might have a different perspective than that, but I don't know. But it's much more dominated by singles than albums, I would say. And the money isn't in the albums anymore. The money is in the touring.
Yeah.
There's a couple of albums that have, over recent years, that have been kind of got their kind of out, rather than like, because there was a lot of like single, but there was a couple over the last, kind of like Charlie XCX, Brat, Chaperone, Midwest Princess. I think those became albums that were listened to, and so they do happen. It does come up, and also Beyonce's Renaissance. Those ones were kind of listened to as albums, so they do pop up, and they do, but not as much as, I think it's very much like track. But every now and again, if there's enough of a kind of feel and consistency in an album, there's still room for an album to gain traction.
Definitely.
Good.
But I think it's really interesting what you said about the Stranger Things one with Kate Bush, because there's also like Deadpool with Madonna's Like a Prayer, and then a few years before that, Journey, Don't Stop Believing, which was like a song that, I don't know about you guys, like I didn't hear it till the 2000s because it was very much an American hit. So in Europe, a lot of Journey stuff, unless you were kind of like an old rocker kind of thing, it wasn't kind of like they weren't kind of European teenage hits. But I actually have heard it more since it's like kind of early 2000 revival than I did actually ever in the 80s or the 90s.
Wasn't it from Glee? Was it Glee that kind of?
Yes, it was. It was Glee. Yeah. So it was. Yeah, it was. There was it was in a film before that, so it was kind of like bubbling under. It had a summer and then it went away again. So somebody's obviously was working Journey's back catalogue, and then you're right, it was Glee. It just became.
Was it Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
Well, definitely, like
Yeah.
with Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think Matt hit the nail on the head. It's how people consume things.
Yeah.
Obviously, like Fleetwood Mac, The Chain had a big surge because it was used in the trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy, and obviously James Gunn as well with the soundtrack. He picked a lot of songs.
So the song can still mean something. A good song, a good quality song can mean something, but it has to be contextualized in a way that actually connects with their own experience, which is why a lot of, like, say, TikToks, like a lot of classic songs have come back through kind of like TikTok trends. And
it's interesting with film as well, because like a lot of this was down to Quentin Tarantino popularizing doing a soundtrack from old songs. But I think there's some kind of inevitability that some filmmaker or content maker at some point they'll hit some kind of pop culture zeitgeist and just happen to use When Doves Cry or something. I mean, if I think like, I don't know, if I think of like 17 Days, I can hear that in my head. I could hear that in a myriad of the latest teen romance film with the two latest, biggest young stars, you know. So let's see if we can will it to happen.
Yeah, you could write a whole John Hughes script out of that song.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's why the estate is going the path of a jukebox musical, which, if a jukebox musical is successful, will probably end up in a movie, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably why the estate is going that way, because actually, for a lot of us that are really obsessed with the Prince, as in the recordings of Prince, you know, I think there's a certain amount of pushback and what an F idea or whatever.
Or he wouldn't have wanted that, which always annoys me because...
Look, we're going to do something he didn't want to do. Because what he wanted in the morning wasn't necessarily what he wanted in the evenings. He was a mercurial fella. That's how I see it, and that sometimes you just need to stop the roof rusting at Paisley.
And I've always argued that the estate needs revenue, so we want to keep Paisley Park open. We want new releases, and they need revenue. And if they do have to license his music, which something he might not would have done, then they need revenue. So that's always been my argument.
Yeah, you're not going to keep it all alive and ticking over if you don't explore revenue channels, and it might not be what he would have liked, or might not be what we like, but it's just reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have any interaction at all with the estate around the book, Matt?
No. I reached out to as many associated artists that I could get the emails for, to ask if they would do a forward. I kind of didn't get anywhere with most of them. I got some response from Jill Jones and from Michael Koppelman. They were the only two that actually responded, other than Susan. And Susan was going to do the forward, but then needed a lot longer than I'd actually taken to write the book to do that because of her schedule. So I kind of, we agreed to just kind of have some comments on stuff like how Camille had come about, and we did it that way. With regards to contact with the estate, no, because I didn't want to be shut down.
Yeah, good answer.
I didn't know what they'd be like, so there's books out there that don't, you don't need permission from the estate for that sort of thing. So I thought I'd rather try and go under the radar than overtly going, oh, look at me.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, because it can be a double-edged sword being official.
Yeah.
I've had, probably not documented, but I've had issues with the estate, and they've requested certain things that I've had to do and jump through, which I've done.
Okay.
So I do understand, and you probably did make the right choice and it's not that I've interacted with them. I've had some interactions with them in the past, but it was a request from them that I had to do. So yeah, I think you made the right choice.
And it wasn't too extreme, as I remember.
No, it wasn't extreme.
It was very light, just to clarify that you wasn't official.
Just like disclaimer lines and some logo stuff. But yeah, it was it was fine. It was very reasonable. And obviously, we did the podcast interview 2 or 3 years ago with when they were running the estate and stuff. So yeah, it's it is like you said, Chopin. It is a double-edged sword. Sometimes you want to have that validation in some ways, but also that clarity that there's not going to be any issues further down the line.
It does affect things that you like. So here we are, where we can talk about any rumor that comes on the internet and what have you. I think once you become official, you kind of like,
but look,
there's, they're a big company that has a marketing team.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So would I love to have the book on the kind of front desk reception at Paisley Park? Hell yeah, but
well, me and Chopin have mentioned it in several podcast episodes that they should embrace the fans' work. Artwork, books, podcasts, videos. That and if they're, if the rumors are true that they're looking to relaunch the club again, music club again, then what perfect way to distribute content and get content probably for free, because fans want to do it, is through books and artwork and podcasts. So
my take on that is it all helps keep his legacy alive.
Yeah, exactly.
There might be disagreements between people in terms of what they want, and certain online places are more hotbeds of debate, let's call it, than others.
We know what you're talking about, but we won't say what it is.
Everybody just smile because we know exactly what you're talking about and where you're talking about.
And others are more positive and just sharing it for the love of Prince and the love of music and so on. Discovering that or rediscovering that, because I hadn't been to that place for a long time because I didn't need to anymore. Oh my goodness, the experience of that with the book release, loads and loads of comments about it, and it's quite clear they hadn't read it, and that was an interesting experience, that I can tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, because I personally find with the Prince community,
you're a braver man than me.
And my experience is people just like to comment for the sake of commenting, and being
just
seen.
It up.
It's very hard sometimes, and it's always a tightrope to walk with the Prince community. Matt, how long did the book take to write, if you don't mind me asking?
So probably, as I said, I had a 2-month chunk last summer where I got the bulk of it done. I probably had a few weeks of light work before that and a few weeks of light work on it after that. So probably, well, I can tell you because I met up with my uni mates in early June, and it was published in September. So, but because I had that gap between contracts, that allowed me to kind of break the back of it, really.
Any appetite for you to do anything else about Prince?
Yeah, no, I've got ideas for 2 more. One, I'm aiming to hit the same deadline of September this year.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Have you put type to?
Yeah. No, I've got probably about half of it done so far.
Oh wow!
So the opposite way round at the moment. I've got work getting in the way, so I'm being a responsible adult and doing the thing that pays the bills rather than writing about what I'd like to be writing about. But
collectively, I think we can all say we're happy for you, even though you haven't got time. We're happy for you on a personal level.
Thank you. Yeah, no. So, but yes, and then I've got a definite other idea after that one, which will probably be a longer book. This is the third one, and then after that, I don't know. It's mapped out enough to keep me entertained and enjoying the research and rediscovering stuff that I hadn't listened to for a while, which I love.
Now I'm intrigued.
Well, I'm not going to say anything at the moment, so don't try.
No, that's all right.
It will be clear when you see what it is.
As long as you come back and talk to us after the fact, Matt. That's
cool. No, I'd love to.
I'll do the artwork.
Calm down.
Yeah. Speaking of which, actually, the artwork by because we're talking about the community is Reverend. Who's someone who's been doing community artwork for years. There's some amazing community artwork. Reverend, isn't it?
It is. He does absolutely awesome work. I don't know him personally. Phil knew him and put me in contact with him. I'd seen some work that he'd done, I think, for Housequake.
He does a lot of work for Housequake.
And he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I love it.
He's my favourite fan artist in the community, and
Yeah.
I'm quite good at what I do, but his work is like top level, and I always aim to be as good as him. So a big shout out to him. And he did do some of our artwork in the early years as well. So
Okay.
he's a legend.
I've definitely seen stuff of his that I was just like, oh, actually, that would look great on an official. Because he do Dwayne Tadell's book as well?
I think so.
Did Reverend do the cover for that?
Not sure.
So. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm pretty.
He's done a lot.
Sure he did.
I know he's done a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a very good sense of humour as well.
I've only shared emails with him, and so I don't know. But all I know is he's a good guy.
Yeah, fantastic. I love what he's done.
I only had one more question, really, Matt. How was it? If you don't mind me asking, and feel free not to share or share. How was it? Was it self-financed, or
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it was. It it didn't cost a lot particularly to create, other than the time that went into it. I have done a few paid for ads since it was released, just to see what they would do and whether Facebook works better than Amazon or whatever. But no, it was other than the time, very cost effective to do, because it's it's in here or me researching, so I don't charge myself a day rate. But yeah, no. So no, it was a pleasure to do, rather than if I was a paid journalist, I'm not sure it would be quite the same, or if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Would you consider that to be a obviously, like you said, 50s, and not sorry to bring your age up, but would you have pursued this as a career, if that makes sense?
Yes and no. I started off in ad agencies, and certainly the smaller ones I worked in, often everyone chipped in, and you'd be doing copywriting and stuff like that. And I read a lot, but unless I was covering football or gigs, I'm not sure I could be motivated enough to be writing just stuff. So no, I like the creative side of TV ads more, and radio ads and stuff, and there is writing in that, but there's better writers than me. I'm writing because I've got a passion about Prince and his music. I can't do that for other stuff, and some people might say I can't do that either too. But
I liked it. I like your book.
Thank you. I tried to make it an entertaining and factual and engaging read. So
like any book that mentions brand New Orleans is good to me. Because that's a lovely piece of music that has almost lost her Prince fans.
Well, yeah, no, exactly.
Well, I have to tell you, right at the very end of the book, you start talking about the Camille stuff and the creation of Camille, and that really, I was messaging Chopin today about this, because it really, really made me start thinking, because I love the fascination, particularly with sort of resonance with the world at the moment, and what that could have meant had it have been released under the Camille name, toured under the Camille name, and sort of stylized and presented like that. I guess all I really wanted to say is thank you for that, because that's obviously we all knew the stories about it was a different persona. He's suggested a bunch of things over the years, sometimes contradictory, about from a sort of gender perspective and or a sexuality perspective, and so on and so forth. And I just really got to thinking, my God, if that had have actually been pushed at the time, what kind of landscape effect would it have had in circa 87, with the world how it was in circa 87? And how would if it had happened, what would referencing those things now, looking backwards in the current climate of men, again, honestly, again, as I said before we started, I'm the guy who has the book on Kindle, so it's as good a read on Kindle as it is otherwise. And so
the book is available on Kindle.
Yeah, so but for me, it was the bit right at the end. I got this sort of thump in the chest of thought. So thank you very much for that, because it really, really is a fascinating thing to speculate on.
I think, if certainly the American market struggled if I Was Your Girlfriend as the second single, which obviously was, on that Camille album, if it had ever happened, kind of highlights how much of a struggle it would have created, I think, as a whole album with that persona. But oh my goodness, the amount of plaudits David Bowie gets for Ziggy Stardust, I think it would have been that type of response, not necessarily at the time, but retrospectively.
Yeah.
And I, whether it's a record store day release or, the rumored one by the White Stripes guy, I do hope they realize it should be released as a limited, as it was intended, because all the songs on it are just really, really upper echelon songs.
Yes.
And I would suspect that is the case for you and Lee and Chopin too, because even if you are 90s babies,
yeah,
oh yeah,
we'll bounce to that one.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I love it all. I mean, I've got a particular sweet spot, but there's no rock hard in a funky place. I mean,
Yeah.
And the fact that that's not on streaming and the Black Album isn't on streaming is, come on.
Yeah,
exactly. And the estate were getting asked questions like that in the Q&A session at Celebration, but it was only afterwards, not in the main section. It was when people were going up to them individually. So I think if what they talked about in terms of embracing the fan base and working with the social media group owners to help spread the word, it is a chance for them to hear about those kind of releases. There was a one of the people who did get to ask a question was a Spanish lady called Barbara, who asked about Small Club being released, and it got the biggest cheer in the room by far.
Oh,
So the more they hear from the fan base, the better. It's
yeah.
not going to be. They're not going to. They need to do the mainstream stuff. They need to do the licensing, the jukebox stuff, but keep the hardcore. And to make things interesting. And if there's any artist in the world that's geared up for making Record Store Day interesting, it's Prince.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes, very much so.
I can think of 1,000 titles right now. Hot experience.
It's as if he was designed for it.
Yeah,
completely.
And I think as much as we said being part of an official thing is a double-edged sword, I think it's also a double-edged sword from the point of view of an estate to be kind of really in with the hardcore fans, because I think there's some of us, myself, in terms of what I want from the vault, I think on a commercial level I might send them up a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
In some respects, in that, like, a compilation of soundcheck jams. Well, a wider audience for that probably isn't there. I'm probably in the minority in the Prince fan base, like having just a collection of soundcheck improvisations from each of the bands. But I would love something like that. But I think just as much as us being kind of affiliated with them could be a double-edged sword, I think there's also a double-edged sword aspect to listening to everything that we say.
No, exactly. So it needs to be a balance, and I'm sure they've had such big issues with sorting out the contracts that they had inherited, in particular the Netflix one, that now that that's done and they can focus on doing stuff that makes us lot happy and makes them money, you kind of would hope the next few years would be really interesting.
I hope so. I've actually got quite high hopes because I don't. If you listen to some people, I don't think they've done as bad a job as some people like to say. Because the just the sheer number of unreleased songs that have actually been released since he was. I mean, there's other artists haven't even seen an iota. Deceased artists haven't seen an iota of that.
Oh,
many.
100%. The Sony legacy guy that was there, who was on the panel,
Yeah.
he said two things. One, he said the number of releases that you've already had are basically what most other people's estates are in their entirety.
Yeah.
So you have had a lot.
Oh yeah.
So to exactly your point, Chopin. And then the second point he said is after the point had been made about only 45% of the vault has been digitized. He said, look, in all of my years of doing this and all my experience of the legacy recordings, no one comes anywhere close to having the amount of stuff recorded that Prince has.
Yeah, can I just on a personal note, can I put that into perspective what that actually means? So I used to work for the Dutch National Archive. Or I used to work at the archive that was digitizing, preparing all of their films, and this is the Dutch TV film and video archive. Their project was 4 years to do all of their stuff, to do all of their 16mm footage. And that's a TV station, multiple channels, and we were doing the years from 1970. I think was doing from 68 to 1982, right? Around that time. And this is a TV station that we're digitizing. Like 10 years down the line, you're at 45%. First of all, that's expensive.
Yeah.
That's really expensive to do. To digitize that much stuff. It's just physically storing. All of those cans have to be at temperature controlled. The electric is running all of the time. All of those staff have to be paid to clean that footage, to prepare that footage. There's a lot of work that goes into just digitizing one roll of film that I don't think the average person knows.
No, and the other point they made is that because of when he was recording the time period, it's all recorded on loads of different formats that were updated over time. So you need to have a facility that can do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had early recorders that were 16-track recorders, which means that you can't use the 24-track recorder, which means that you've got to have, and then you've got the 2-inch tapes, which is a different tape machine altogether. That's before you even get into the digital formats of DATs, memory cards from a host of different samplers, because that's going to need to be backed up, because all of that is audio, samples that he created and put on sample machines. Because all of that is part of, some of those were triggered off the tape. When you look at the amount of format, and he's using audio and video, and they've got a lot of paper, written notes and everything that they need to back up. They've got outfits that they need to archive. Yeah. So there's different museum archivists for fabrics, paper. That's before we even get into the tapes, CDs. The fact that it's taken them 10 years to do 45% just to digitize, not to review, not to edit, just to digitize. That's a monumental vault. And to think that we, some people were saying, "Oh, we've probably seen the best of it now." It's like,
no,
exactly. How can you possibly know? And look, a lot of it will be gigs, and a 2-hour gig is going to take up a lot. The amount of tours he did is going to take up a lot of that time, but doesn't mean it's not good stuff, because his gigs were awesome too.
Yeah, I mean, it's why you went multiple nights. It's because you knew that even on a very, very formulated, rehearsed show, he improvised, and it expanded, and there was the odd song or the outtake, and then you've got all of the after shows or the rehearsals he filmed. And to kind of bring it back, this shows you why he had the quality of B-sides, just to kind of run it back around, why he had the quality of B-sides and what B-sides actually mean in the context of Prince. They are a glimpse into this. They were the only glimpse we had into this other world of the vault.
Exactly that.
before we go, like, where can people find this book?
The book is on Amazon. There's two versions of it. There's the normal one, which is the original one I released, which is on all Amazon channels as Kindle or paperback. I caved into pressure from our American friends and did a US special, which includes Gotta Stop Messing About. So, but that's only available through Amazon.com. And occasionally, if I'm selling something on Five and Dime, I throw in a signed copy with whatever I'm selling.
Matt, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for writing the book as well and sharing your time with us this evening. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Paddy. Thank you. It's been the PPUK pod.